So FOCA is our video methodology that we use. It's a process, a framework, and also a rubric that we use to help people consistently make engaging, impactful video. And so each of the letters of FOCA, they're the four elements, but they really, when we set out to create FOCA, we wanted to answer two questions. So the first is, how do you know if a video is any good? I think if you've seen, YouTube videos from across the web, or you've taken a training module, or you've built any type of video before, you've seen it, maybe you have a gut feeling where you're like, maybe the script was really hit me in the right place, or I really feel like I learned something, or maybe it was highly produced and the visuals were great. But it's how do we take that gut feeling and how do we turn it into something actionable that we can recognize and repeat? And so if you can recognize a good video, that also means that you'll also figure out what you need to do to make it better. So what we've come up with, because really Ellie and I have done the work of watching hundreds of videos, making videos ourselves. We've done the work and we boiled it down, and we know that every video that we run into has these four elements represented by the letters FOCA or FOCA. So again, if we're not having you saying in your head, do you even FOCA by the end of this webinar, then we haven't done our job. But the F stands for foundation. This is really about making sure you've done the work and figuring out what your audience wants, who is this for, and how you're going to design this video. So you're not even in studio yet. You're just establishing the foundation for that video that you're trying to create. Next is organization. So you're thinking about, how do you structure information for video? We know that video is a very different format or medium than text or writing an essay or a podcast format. So all of these have different ways of communicating information, but video, you want to distill it down into its simplest bare bones and make sure that the information you're presenting through your video and audio is clearly organized. Third is content, that C, which is really about how the visuals and the audio, so how those two channels interact together to make sure that your information is engaging and not confusing. So that's content. And then finally, we have A for action, which is call to action. And what we notice is that every good video that we watch, they always ask you to do something, whether that's, get in contact with someone, take this knowledge check, do your research on this to further to further your knowledge on this topic. It's always asking the viewer to do something, because your experience should always live beyond the actual watching of the video. You don't just want to watch a video for video's sake. You want it to drive some sort of action, behavior, new mindset, etc. So these are the four letters. And today we're just dealing with the first one, foundation.
That's right. So there's a lot that goes into each of these, but really what we're trying to do is give you an actionable framework for each. And these usually come with a set of guiding questions. And so for foundation, there are three things. We talked about audience, outcome, and format. And the questions that go along with this are, who are you talking to? Who is this video actually designed for? What is it that you want them to do? That's your outcome. And then format, how are you going to get them to do it? And if you know these, I promise you, they are going to guide you through all the rest of the letters. And people think, I just want to get into Synthesia. I just want to start building this content. I want to start pasting my B-roll together with my avatar and make something pretty. I promise if you have these three questions answered, once you get to that content piece, it's going to be so much easier. That said, I have not always practiced what I'm currently preaching. I have so many times rushed into the development of my tool, of what I'm working on, without taking the time to really articulate this to myself, and then realizing when I'm halfway through that I kind of have a pile of nothing that doesn't make a lot of sense. It isn't guided towards anybody. And so I'm going to actually let's go ahead and jump right into it. What I want to do today is really focus on one specific video and use this as our guiding example. This is a video that was made by one of our designers. And the idea here is that this is a course, a Construction 101 course. And what we're going to do is define the audience outcome and format for this. So we're going to see the end product, but then we're going to erase it from our brains and go back and visualize, based on a handful of questions, the audience outcome and format that led to this. So let's go ahead and watch it together real quick.
Safety in the workplace is of paramount importance at Acme. Workplace accidents and injuries affect thousands of workers each year and have a serious impact on personal well-being and business. With simple techniques and common sense, workplace accidents and injuries can be prevented to the greatest extent possible. In this course, you will learn the basics you need to know to prevent workplace injuries. My colleague Matthew will highlight the topics of this course.
Thanks, Mike. By the end of this course, you familiarize yourself with the following topics: safety equipment guidelines, preventing accidents, preventing slips and trips, and preventing a fire. If you need further clarification, send an email to our compliance team at compliance@appy.com or simply get in touch with your supervisor.
Okay, so that's our video for the day. This is a Construction 101 course. You might already be thinking, ooh, I kind of have a sense of who the audience is and what that audience is supposed to do. Great, wonderful. Keep those thoughts in your mind. I'm going to walk Kevin through how we got here. And so let's go ahead and start off the audience. Who is this for? Why are we doing this? And so first of all, let's talk about why this matters so much. You might think it's obvious. I'm making a video for viewers. I'm making this for my people. Well, what we want to do is put a little bit more polish on that answer and answer this question of who is this for well. And it weaves into every part of your FOCA from here on out. This is the cornerstone for all videos, is that person sitting on the other side of the screen. And that's really what we want to do. We want to organize your ideas. We want to give your script a voice. Who are you talking to? How do you talk to them? And we want to help you better address that viewer by defining who they are. And we're going to do this by doing something called a proto-persona. In my work, I've done really robust persona work in the past, where we sit down and we analyze for months the people that we're going to deliver content to. But in this case, that's not quite what we want to do. We don't need a heavy lift. We can do this with something as simple as one sentence. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to have Kevin erase what he's seen from his brain. I'm going to have the video that we just saw, and I'm going to put him in the position of the video creator. Kevin, you've been tasked with making a Construction 101 video series, and you know a little bit about what you need to do. I like that you put your student hat on here. This is very fun. What we're going to do is we're going to ask some questions, and we're going to visualize one viewer, one person that this is going to reach. And we're going to kind of use that person to shape the vision of our video going forward. By articulating this one person through these questions, I'm hoping you'll have somebody in mind every time you go to develop videos for this course. And so we're going to make this one sentence. This is a little Mad Lib. Kevin, can you kind of tell me what you're seeing here?
Sure. So I see a bunch of blanks. I see a sentence. It says that a name is a character who wants to motivations and prior knowledge. I think I also see a camera. So if you want to take a screenshot, I think you can do that as well. But I think the one that stands out to me is motivations. What do we mean by that? That sounds very filmic, or that sounds like video language.
I guess the way I would put this is, why is this person here? Why are they watching your video? Is it because they have to? Is it because they want to? What's getting them to actually click and see this? And so we'll have some guiding questions to explain that a little more in a second. Anything else?
I think prior knowledge is also interesting because everybody comes with something, their own experiences, but it sounds like we're going to be identifying that when I think about my audience as well. Why is that?
Because we want to know how much we need to tell them. What is the scope of this video? How much do I have to cram in here? Where are we meeting them? At nothing or at expert? And so this is helpful in kind of gauging who that person is. So let's go ahead and start filling these in with some Mad Lib questions. I'm going to ask you, I want you to answer. I might guide you a little bit and we'll see where we end up. So first and foremost, let's start with the big idea. Why are they watching this Construction 101 video, Kevin?
Got it. So I'm thinking of that this person, they probably they are going to go to a construction site, and there's a lot of safety and safety rules and equipment, and so we want to make sure that they know these rules so that they don't endanger themselves or something like that.
That's a really good start. I want to push back on you here, because one of the things that you've said is what we want. We want this person to be safe at work, right? Like, that's really important. But what does this person actually want? Are they being internally motivated? They want to be safe at work, or are they potentially maybe externally motivated? Can you think of a reason why somebody might have to watch this?
Yeah. So I think with compliance, if we're talking about compliance training, my friend Jeff is helping me out here. That, if it's compliance training, people need to know these rules or they can't do the job, or
Right.
There's some sort of legal requirement. Thank you, Jeff, for typing that in.
Jeff's got it. So this is true. Motivation isn't always something aspirational or something really romantic. Sometimes it's you have to do this to keep your job, to keep your compliance. So sometimes motivation is external. Those can be hard because we want people to just like fall in love with our videos and want to see them. But sometimes we've got to make people see this stuff. So in this case, that's a motivation you might want to consider. I'd say what you kind of hit on here is they want to be safe at work and they have to, or they don't get to go to work. So those are kind of two motivations we identified here. Next question, let's go ahead. So what would this person already know for a construction 101 course?
Yeah, so for a construction 101 course, they've probably been somewhere where compliance is in practice, or there's safety or rules such as a hospital, and so they probably have an awareness of an idea of heavy equipment, or they have an idea of places that are run by rules and regulations, but maybe they haven't been to a construction site before. So that's kind of what we're working with.
Totally. This person isn't walking in off the street to a construction site. They're familiar with the idea of this job site. What they might not know is like the specifics of this job site, or maybe like the procedures that need to be done word for word. So Jeff, again, each site constructor has their own policies, right? So you need to know what's happening here. You might know the idea of how to be safe, but what does this workforce need to do to be safe? So they might know a little bit that we can apply, meaning we don't have to explain the basics. We don't have to explain why boots are important. We might have to explain why hard hats in this specific area on this site have to be used, or why we do these procedures in this way. So again, we kind of want to meet them where they already are. And already we're starting to see what we have to include in the video and what we might not have to. Next question. This one, we're going to dive a little deeper. Now we're starting to really visualize this person on the other side of the screen. And I think you've probably already been doing this. What is this person like? What are they bringing to this viewing experience? Can you describe the person that's kind of coming to your mind, Kevin?
Sure. So I think when I think of construction, I think of where I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'm thinking about maybe somebody who is either just graduated from school or has just started looking for a job. They're a new employee. They're probably young. I happen to be thinking about a guy. Yeah, he's probably a young, inexperienced person just out looking for a job, or has not worked on a job site before.
That's good. That's really good. And I would even push you to go a little farther and make this person like a fully formed character. I could hear it in your voice. You're thinking about what he looks like, maybe the car he drives, the sports teams he likes. Like, this guy, right? You've met him somewhere before. If you're working in this space, if you're like a subject matter expert in the space, I bet that you all have like a guy that that you've explained this type of content before to. I want you to bring that into this character, because it's going to help you really see them when you think, what would that person need? What do they need to do? So you've identified a gender. It's a guy. He's young. He's potentially early in his career. He maybe just left trade school. These are great characteristics, but we could say he also drives like a Chevy Silverado, and he loves
love a Silverado.
And he loves Penn State. Like, how about that? Like, we can go that far, because now he's
go
a
Nittany
real
Lions.
person.
Yeah.
He's a real person that like we can visualize. And so we got this person sitting at his computer watching this training. What's his name, Kevin?
Just laughing at some of the comments that are coming in. We have an
great.
F-150.
I love that people are giving them these details. Yes. I love this.
So give your person a name. The person that comes to name, this guy's name is maybe it's the Sopranos, but this guy's name is Tony.
I love it. It's Tony. So the Tony, Mike, it's funny you say Mike, because Mike is actually one of our construction avatars. He's a Mike in my mind too. But I love that you guys in the chat are following along with this. Whatever name you gave him, whatever personality you gave him, you now have a shorthand to refer to him, whether it's your Mike or your Tony, going forward. In this case, I'm gonna stick with Tony. I think you got that right. We answered our questions about Tony. We now have a way to refer to Tony. We know a little bit about why Tony is in our course. We know about what he already knows, so what we have to explain. We have a couple little characteristics that can help us approach him a little bit better. And we also have a name to refer to him. And so how does that turn into a sentence here? Tony is a young, new Acme employee who wants to comply with work safety rules because he has to, and he hasn't been on many job sites before. And so now I've got Tony in my mind. I'm making a video for Tony. Yes, I'm making a video for like 400 800, 1,500 Tonys, but Tony has some characteristics that I'm going to try to speak to directly with my video. And you might be thinking, well, it could have been anything. It could have filled anything in these blanks for Construction 101, but I'm going to challenge you on that and show you another example of Bob. Bob is an experienced foreman who wants to keep his employees safe on site and has years of experience and history at Acme. Bob needs a different video. Bob does not need to know about hard hats. Bob could tell you everything ever about hard hats and show you his collection he's built over the years. He needs something different. And so we're not making this video for Bob, we're making it for Tony. And so the content in it, the way that we write it, the way we speak in it is all going to be different for Tony than it would be for Bob. So this is our little ad lib exercise. I hope this is useful. We're going to go ahead and move into outcome because I want to see what it is. We talked about what Tony wants. Tony wants to go to work. He wants to be safe. But what do we actually want Tony to do? This is our big question. And so this is important because this is what's going to give you a goal to aim for. Kevin, can you tell me what happens when people don't have outcomes in their videos? Like if they haven't visualized this?
Yeah, I think in the videos that we've seen, if you don't visualize the outcome, you're kind of left with a video that is being watched or just for videos for the sake of creating a video. It's I'm sure we've all had those compliance training videos or things that we've done for work where you're just like, that was great, but so what? What do you want me to do with this information? And often when we're working with clients, I think we know from learning theory, excuse me, I just had a small stroke there, but we have from learning theory that if you don't apply new knowledge, your brain is going to lose it. Our brains are meaning-making machines. They're there to recognize patterns, create new things, but it's not meant for storing new information. So this is the classic case of if you don't use it, you lose it. So when we think of outcome, you want to think of what do you want your audience to do with this information? What do you want them to do after watching that video? How do you want them to apply that new knowledge?
Absolutely. And I think the way that we've put it before is what is something Tony could do that would let me know he saw this? It could be something simple like he shares a link and he replies to an email. It could be something like he changes his whole life and moves on to bigger and better things. It could be a huge range of things, but we should be defining that before we start making our video, because then we're going to be aiming at that activity. And so let's do this again, one more Mad Lib, bear with me. So Kevin, can you kind of walk through this one and tell me what we need to fill in and what you might already know?
Sure. So the viewer should do something. She should do an action by a certain time frame. And I'm guessing that viewer is probably still Tony.
Tony, we know this one. So we only got 1 down, 2 to go. A lot less work this time. But what about these other 2? What are some things that you might think we want our viewer to do?
Sure. So, we want Tony to watch this video so that he, knows safety. He can, he knows safety, and we want him to do this by, before he steps onto that construction site.
And that's a good one. So we're gonna get like to that level. But what I often see people do is kind of the light version of what you just said. Tony should watch the entire video by the end of the video. That's what a lot of our outcomes end up aimed at, is something that's Tony just needs to have seen it. And if we know he's seen it, then he knows what's in it. I want you guys to rethink it if this is where you're kind of aiming currently, because yes, we want people to watch our videos, but we really want to make sure that it's tied to some sort of behavior or action or next meeting. The outcome could literally be they watch the next video in the series. Like that could be part of it. But let's try and think intentionally here. And so I've got 2 questions to ask you to fill in these blanks a little better, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
First one, we talk about what Tony wants to do. And you kind of hit on this when we were talking about that. What do we want Tony to do? Like, what is our goal here? What's our tangible objective?
So we want Tony, if Tony goes onto this construction site, before he gets on there, we want him to be able to prove in some way that he knows these rules. We don't just want him to watch the video. We want him to maybe pass some sort of knowledge check if this is compliance, or we want him to make sure that he has all the different pieces of attire. Maybe he's got his steel-toed boots, his high reflector vest, but he has, that checklist of things. So we want him to be able to complete, some sort of knowledge check that says he knows these different rules.
I think that that's a really solid outcome. So knowledge checks are a great way to prove that somebody actually has like retained information. Is something you can add to your videos in order to kind of force that this outcome has come through. And if they can't complete it, they obviously have not achieved your outcome. That's a really good one. The other thing I want us to think about though is how long we have to give them to do this. Like, what is the time frame for this? And I think this is really important. And we sometimes just say like, we want them to eventually do it, but we don't ever check ourselves on when that could happen. What would be a good time frame in your mind for Tony behaving the way we want him to?
So let's say he is he's going to be on the construction site in a week. We want him to complete it before that time. We want him to watch this video and be able to pass this checklist by the time he steps onto the construction site.
Absolutely. So I think that we can do things like, I want him to understand and be able to articulate this concept before the end of the video, or we can do something in real time where I need him to be able to act this way before he goes into work the next time. This is a very open-ended one. So these questions are not quite as tidy as our first Mad Lib, and that's okay. These are big ideas, but this is how you can kind of zoom in and zoom in on your scope. So what do you need them to do? Improve themselves as a person by the time they are, retired from their career. That's a big one, right? Or we could do something small, like be able to correctly wear safety vest before entering job site, like very tangible, small things. And so these can really be big and small, but if you define them before you start making your video, you're going to be aiming at something better. So let's look at a couple that we came up with based on this. Tony should know how to complete a safety checklist before he has finished this video series. So by the time the video series is complete, he should be able to demonstrate to me that he knows how the safety checklist works, right? That's really finite, something we can measure against, and there's an end time for him being able to do it. We also could say we want Tony to be able to understand the principles of safety by the time he enters the job site. So now we're understanding. It's not that he has to perform a task, it's that he leaves with a sense of understanding. I might have to check him and see how he does that, but I have an outcome that I am aiming for him to be able to do. And one more, we want him to be familiar with the company's policies by the time he completes the course. Again, these are all kind of different levels of broadness, but if I define them, I'm not going to get distracted by other things. If my goal is to have people be familiar with the company's policies, I should not be introducing things about, where our hard hats are stored necessarily. We're going higher level than that. It's going to help me just scope in on the knowledge that's most important. And this is really important when we get into this next step. And actually, I'm going to pass this off to you, Kevin. Now we're going to start talking about the formats that we can use to express these.
This is where we start to get into, you have, who your audience is in mind, you have the outcome, what you want what should they do after watching the video. Now we're going to talk about what is the structure for that video. And so the reason we have a skull here is not to celebrate Halloween, we're much past that, but as a visual reminder for you that we're going to be talking about skeleton and structure. So, what do I mean by that? So format is really important because, much like other media we use, everything has a structure to it. You don't just set out to write an essay just by writing free form. You have an introduction, you have a thesis statement, and some sort of conclusion. So video, much like an essay, has its own structure. So if you look here on the right, I've given you 3 different skeletons. Just for clarity, we're looking here at a fish. We're looking here at a fish. We're looking here at what I think is actually a flightless bird, because I do not see bones for wings. And we're looking at a human skeleton. And so what's interesting about each of these skeletons is that they have standard parts. Each has a skull or a head. They have some sort of vertebrae or spine, and they have some sort of hands or fins or feet, something for locomotion. In this case, though, we notice that each skeleton is designed for something different. It's designed for a different outcome. What does this fish skeleton want to do? It wants to swim. What does this flightless bird want to do? Well, it wants to be able to apparently walk very fast. What does the human skeleton want to be able to do? It's designed to take selfies. And so it's our job here to figure out which skeleton is the right fit for you. Which skeleton and framework do you want to use when it comes to putting together your video? So let's look at some skeletons. Each skeleton has some major bones for us. Each of our videos is going to have a hook. You want to invest your audience and grab their attention in some way. It has an intro that says what is going to be covered. You want to have your spine or your body, which is your key topics or moments. So it'd be key topics if you were explaining a new concept. It would be key moments if you were doing storytelling. And then finally, you would end with your feet that drive your action or a call to action. What do you want to happen next after you watch the video? Now, let's look at 3 common formats, and I'm going to play a preview of each of these. These are 3 Synthesia videos. These are the 3 most common short formats that we help our clients with. So one is we help them with how-to videos where we want them to do something. We have educational or informational videos. Think of these like lessons or learning modules. And we have a product tour or explainer. So I'm going to play about 10 seconds of each video, and you'll get a sense of the head and the neck, the hook in the intro, to get a sense of what each video is like or what it's about. So here we go.
Hey there. Welcome to Intercom Help Center. In this short video, you will learn how to move the messenger's position on your product or website. The messenger can...
All right. And as I was doing that, I realized I still had my student hat on, so it got a little itchy, so I just took it off. Next, we have our educational or informational video. So done by our very own Oleg at Synthesia.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Training 101. Cybercrime has become a major problem for businesses as hackers become more skilled and increasingly successful at breaching a company's security measures through cyber attacks. In this module, you'll learn why hackers do what they do, learn about the different types of cyber attacks they use, and learn what actions you should and should not take to protect yourself.
Okay, so that was the educational video that you might see in a module or as a lesson. And then finally, we have the product tour or product explainer.
Healthcare is constantly adapting to meet the needs of patients. In our increasingly digital world, patients can have access to technology that may help them better understand respiratory conditions like asthma. Research reveals that one of the biggest challenges in respiratory care is healthcare providers, HCPs, being able to accurately assess a patient's.
Okay, so those are 3 different, and these actually just, I feel like calling out these 3 videos were all made within Synthesia. So, that's another webinar for another day where we can show you how we made those. We'll also be sending you the studio video file so you can take a peek under the hood and check these out for yourself in your studio browser. But for now, let's look at the skeletons of each of these. So with how-to videos, if we look at the outcome, the purpose of a how-to video is to do something. You want your user to be able to do something after they finish. So a how-to video is used to teach a skill or using a process or step-by-step direction. So an example of a scenario that you might use a how-to video is that Emma needs to demonstrate how to create a pivot table in Excel. And so there are a certain number of steps, maybe 2 or 3 steps, where you will create that pivot table. And it's important that you label out that process. On the right side here, you can see what are the different parts that are going to be in the video. What I've highlighted for you is that what makes a how-to video the spine, the most important piece of your how-to video, is going to be labeling out a process or steps. So demonstrate and explain each of the steps. The how-to video is going to have each of these different parts in its skeleton, but the steps is what makes it different. Next, we'll go on to educational videos. So the outcome of this is that you want your learner to know something or do something new. So you can use educational videos to teach or explain a new concept, mindset, or skill. So in the scenario we're looking at here is that new managers need to understand a growth mindset and how to achieve results by adopting innovation. So maybe you want them to learn a very complex concept like data migration or a digital mindset, or learn a new skill. This is not something you can teach in a micro learning video. This is something you're going to have to teach through a series of lessons, modules, learning activities, and exercises. Now, if we move over to the right side here and we look at the skeleton, you can see, of course, we have our hook, our intro, and call to action. But these videos are going to contain the spine of this is the key concepts. So you want to be able to teach something specific, but then you want to be able to always support that with examples, stories, cases, and to provide context so that the learner can understand or know something new after watching the educational video. Third, The third skeleton we have here is a product explainer. So that's for those of you who are coming to us from a marketing background. Perhaps you have a product you'd like to explain. Well, the outcome of the product explainer video is that you want to convince someone of something. So in this case, the goal of the video is to identify a problem and propose your product as a solution. So the scenario here, this is Grammarly, which is an AI tool that we use to make sure we're spell checked and everything is written in concise. But the scenario is Grammarly helps you communicate more effectively by using AI to sharpen your writing so that you'll be able to ace your next cover letter. And this is just a step aside in saying that neither Chevy nor Grammarly is sponsoring this webinar, but if you're out there, please write to us. But if you look at here on the right side, you can see that with a product explainer, we have the hook, we've got a call to action. The spine of this here and where it gets different is that every product explainer has some sort of problem statement. It has a resolution and key benefits. So, problem statement, you're thinking about those 90s infomercials where somebody's clutching their back in pain. The resolution is that back brace, and the key benefits is, hey, their posture is better and they get compliments at the next dinner that they attend. So let's check our knowledge just a little bit. You have these three formats that I've showed you: the how-to videos, which the outcome is to do something, the educational video, which is to know something, and a product explainer, which is to convince someone of something. I'm going to float up 5 different scenarios here, and I want you to take your best guess at what you think the proper skeleton or format for this video is. So here we go.
Amazing. So actually, Kevin, before we jump too far,
Yes.
What video format would you have used for our Construction 101? Is that how-to, explainer, or is it potentially educational?
Yeah, so without giving anybody motion sickness, I would use an educational video because, ultimately I want our friend Tony to pass a knowledge check. I want him to internalize our safety rules and policies, and I want him to know this stuff and prove it before he gets onto the job site.
It's true. What we're trying to do is raise his awareness about safety. We're not necessarily showing him how to do it just yet. That might be something else, but this course was intended to be educational. So nicely done. Okay, so what now? We've gone through a lot, right? FOCA is both a review tool, so you can assess the videos you've already made, and it's also a development tool, so you can make sure that the content that you make in the future is good looking. And so you can use it both ways. Today we were focusing more on that doing. There was a little bit of how-to to this, but really what we want you to come away with is seeing kind of how these flow together, how defining your audience is going to help you to define the outcomes, the things that you want them to be able to do. And then hopefully at the very end here, we talked about some different ways that you can take those two pieces and turn them into a framework that is our formats here. These are just 3 of the formats. There are many other different ones, but these are the ones we see most often, and they are the most compelling when it comes to achieving an outcome of some sort. So this is a really good way for you to kind of get started is applying those. So foundations is the most important part. And so what all of the rest of FOCA is important, but if you do these pieces, if you can answer these questions well, it's going to make sure that all those other letters are much easier. So Kevin, we have a couple of takeaways that we will follow up with you to receive. These are a worksheet that kind of summarizes everything we talked about, so you can have this on hand. You can answer these questions on the fly. If you're sitting there making your video and you're like, who's this for again? You can answer those questions, get yourself moving a little faster, and also look at those high-level frameworks. So we put this together for you. We will send it out to you. We will also include some links to the videos that you saw today, so you can actually watch them in your own time, but also take a sneak peek if you're a Synthesia user, open them up behind the scenes, pull them apart and see how that format got turned into a little bit of what we're going to cover in our future sessions, that organization and content. So keep an eye out. These will be coming to you shortly. As far as what to do next, some things that I would love to ask you all to kind of think about committing to. First and foremost, I want you to try and do one of those micro proto-personas. Just try writing that sentence for yourself. You've all got different audiences. You are talking to so many different people. Who makes sense for you? Who's sitting in the chair watching your video? Take a second and try and complete that sentence for yourself. Also, take a stab at writing some outcome statements. You might have a couple different ones. You might have to test out the level of ambitiousness, but try doing that and see how it fits in, and if it could help you maybe clarify what it is you're trying to achieve with your video. And then finally, browse those common formats and consider which might fit best in your work. So those are 3 things that I'd encourage you to do after today. And I'm actually going to ask you to commit to it on this next slide. We'll just prompt you in the chat. Go ahead and tell us, what's your next step? Is it the proto personas? Is it that you need to really better define the audience? Do you feel like you got that like in the bag and you need to kind of redefine what their outcome should be? Or are you looking to go ahead and start picking formats and investigating which of those formats meets your outcomes best? Tell us which one is working best for you. I can see that our chat is starting to get some responses, which is fantastic.